Guten Tag, everyone. I am wearing my München Deutschland shirt. Munich is how we say it in English because I am super excited. In now less than 2 weeks, I will be on my way to Bavaria for our very first Vlogging Through History group tour. There are 20 folks that are going along with me. I'm super excited for that. We're going to be going to Munich, we're going to Salzburg and Vienna, and I will be documenting the entire trip for Vlogging Through History, so I'm excited about that, and I thought it would be a good time to dive into a little Bavarian history today. It's actually the reason I first discovered the channel General Knowledge, which I've been doing some reactions to lately, because I was looking for a video to do about Munich or Bavaria, and he has some on both. And we'll probably get into more of that, but I thought it'd be a great time for me to learn a little bit about the place that I'm going to. And while we're at it, I want to give a big shout out and a thank you to Alex from Wayback History, and also Aaron in Bourbon, Indiana. Thank you guys so much for your support on Patreon. The link is in the description to the original content if you want to check it out or any of his other videos without my commentary. Let's dive in.
What is Bavaria? In this video, I'm going to take a look at the region of Bavaria, mentioning its evolution throughout time and determining what it is and in what form it exists in current days. Today, the Free State of Bavaria is a landlocked federal state of Germany.
And that's a great point they make right off the bat there, that Germany is a federal republic, much like the United States. And so you can, though it's not exact because every country has its own take on how those things go, you can kind of at least theoretically view states like Bavaria, which is Bayern in German, Baden-Württemberg, Anhalt, Saxony, all these places, as being similar in many ways to Ohio, Pennsylvania, things like that.
At 70,000 square kilometers, it's the biggest German state by land, and counting with 13 million inhabitants, it's the second largest in terms of population. But I think in order to understand the current state of Bavaria, we have to look back at the origins, not only of the state in its current form, but of the very first rulers of the region, because I think all of it has contributed in some way to the current shape and form of modern Bavaria. So let's hop in our imaginary time machine and travel back a few hundred years. Actually, almost a few thousand. As a people, the Bavarians come from a region north of the Alps, a region which had before been inhabited by the Celts, while it was a province of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, a lot of people think of the Celts and Celtic culture as being more of a British thing, but really so much of what was modern Western Europe, or what is modern Western Europe, would have been classified as Celts by folks like the Romans. There were different groups within the Celts. It's kind of, I guess, a way of looking at this would be to say that when we talk about Native Americans, or the term they used to use, Indians, and now indigenous peoples here in North America, well, that's a pretty catch-all title. There's a huge difference between Navajo and Iroquois, or Lakota and the Cheyenne. There's all these different groups within that umbrella group that we call Native American or indigenous peoples. The Celts are the same way.
First as Rhaetia and then as Noricum. Obviously, these provinces didn't include the exact borders of the Bavarian state, but they were roughly in the same region. They spoke Old High German, but unlike other Germanic populations, they didn't migrate to Germania from somewhere else. Instead, they were formed by the merging of a number of other population groups left behind after the Roman Empire came to an end. The Celtic Boii, the Romans themselves, the Marcomanni, the Alemanni, the Syrians, among others.
And Alemanni, it's interesting to see that because that is the word in many languages that is used for Germany. I think in French, Germany is called Allemagne.
Their name, Bavarian, means men of Baia, which some say indicates the area of Bohemia, where the Boii and the Marcomanni were from, which means these might have been the initial Germanic populations to come together in Bavaria and settle the area.
And Bohemia today would be Czechia or the Czech Republic, that area. Czechoslovakia was all of this here. And you'll see it in a lot of records from even like 100 years ago referred to as Bohemia.
After the fall of the Roman Empire, the region which we today know as Bavaria became a part of Francia, also known as Kingdom of the Franks, the largest post-Roman barbarian kingdom in Western Europe. Francia existed from 481 to 843 AD, and the emergence of the first Bavarian duchy within the Kingdom of the Franks dates back to 555 AD.
So here's where we're starting to see now feudalism kind of entrenched in this kingdom that's eventually going to be ruled by Charlemagne. And then eventually, of course, you're going to have the Holy Roman Empire, which is going to include the northern part of Italy, most of Germany, Austria, and little bits of other things. But it's under Charlemagne's grandson that the Frankish kingdom is going to be divided into three. The western part is going to become modern-day France. The eastern part is going to become kind of modern-day Germany eventually.
Being incorporated into Francia in the 8th century. Francia eventually turned into the Carolingian Empire, ruled by Charlemagne, and not long after it collapsed. When it did, it was divided into West, Middle, and East Francia.
There we go again. Take a shot if you're playing the VTH drinking game, something that I mentioned right before he shows it. This middle area is kind of interesting, too, because that's going to include the region of what we call Alsace and Lorraine, which is an area that's going to be fought over by Germany and France many times.
What's important for us right now is East Francia because that's where Bavaria was located. East Francia was divided into 4 duchies: Swabia, Franconia, Saxony, and Bavaria, lasting from 843 to 962. At this time, Bavaria represented itself through the coat of arms of the House of Welf, which controlled it. During some of these years, for instance, 952 to 976.
So interesting to note here, of course, and remember that we've got various nations in our modern day map that at the time, the idea of nationhood was different then. It was much more about feudal control and who the person was in charge of it rather than identifying with a particular nation. So you see here, for example, you've got Salzburg, which is in Austria now, which at the time was well inside of Bayern, which is the German word for Bavaria.
Bavaria's rule extended into other regions, like parts of Austria and almost all the way down to Venice into the Verona region in Italy. In fact, their loss of one territory, Ostarrîchi, roughly in this area.
And Trieste, I think, is Trieste in Croatia now? I'm not sure. I'll have to look it up.
Which was then granted to the Babenberger family, marks the founding of Austria. So Bavaria is at the origin of that. And this Bavarian duchy is, I think, the origin point for the current Bavarian state. After some time and through a lot of changes, the regions of East Francia transformed into the Holy Roman Empire, or became a part of it, of which the Duchy of Bavaria continued to belong to as well. Interestingly, it is in an internal conflict with the empire that the very well-known blue and white colors became the symbols of Bavaria.
And he talks about the conflict within the empire. The Holy Roman Empire is such an absolute mess, and the fact that it lasted for as long as it did with the way that it was made up, with all of these differing groups, these small little formations that had, some were at different levels in terms of duchies and principalities, and some allied with each other and warred with each other. And then, of course, eventually you have the split between Catholic, which I believe Bavaria stayed relatively, Southern Catholic Kingdom, whereas a lot of other parts of modern-day Germany would eventually become Lutheran or Protestant.
Between 1070 and 1180, there was a lot of animosity between the Holy Roman Emperor and the rulers of Bavaria. Eventually, the animosity scaled up into an actual conflict, which the House of Welf lost. Being so, the emperor, at this time Frederick Barbarossa, removed the titles of Bavaria and Saxony of this house, granting it to the House of Wittelsbach,
Ah,
whose coat of arms is the blue and white pattern we all associate with Bavaria. And this royal house ruled the region for almost 800 years until 1918.
it was a huge deal when you think about it. It was freaking World War I that put an end to the House of Wittelsbach ruling Bavaria. And you know, it just goes to show that for every place where you have like turnover in dynasties, some like this one just went on forever.
Right now, the year is 1180, and the Duchy of Bavaria is a member of the Holy Roman Empire. Essentially, their status remained unchanged for about 500 years. But then, during the 30 Years' War in 1623, Bavaria's dukes were raised to prince-electors of the Holy Roman Empire.
So, 30 Years' War, major conflict. I mean, absolutely devastating to Central Europe. We've got to do some more content on the 30 Years' War at some point. Not talked about nearly enough. We're talking millions dead, and this was a conflict between Protestant and Catholic that emerges in the aftermath of the Protestant Reformation. And so this is all political, raising Bavaria to the status of a prince-electors, of course, because Bavaria is staying loyal to Catholicism when many parts of the Holy Roman Empire are not.
And therefore, the Duchy of Bavaria transformed into the Electorate of Bavaria. In reality, there was no actual change to Bavaria when it changed from a duchy to an electorate, except it had more power and influence within the Holy Roman Empire.
And what's an electorate? It just means that you got to vote, right? You have a say in who the Holy Roman Emperor is going to be. The Holy Roman Empire is not necessarily passed down from one generation to the next the way that a kingdom would be in most cases. So you've got a lot of power among these prince-electors.
Their territory remained unchanged, and it's actually interesting to look at weird changes that Bavaria's territory went through at times. At this specific time, for instance, their domains weren't really pleasant on the eyes of map enthusiasts, with independent islands in the middle of their land and separate territories which they also ruled. Now, I'm going to be totally honest with you right now. The events that took place during this period of the Electorate of Bavaria are just a big mess. The amount of marriages...
That's true of the Holy Roman Empire in general, but yeah, he's absolutely right.
Revolts, wars, agreements, and relations between the different princes, houses, duchies, and kingdoms is just ridiculously large and complicated. So I'm going to skip all these many small, although sometimes important events and boil it down to this. Bavaria's rule became eventually more and more absolutist on an internal level. They were able to, whether by desire, conquest, or inheritance, increase both their territory and their influence.
This is a time when there's a lot of that happening in the Holy Roman Empire. You've got Prussia emerging and consolidating and growing in power. This is where Germany's emerging as the eventual Germany that we'll see in the 19th century, the German Empire, where you see kind of consolidation and conquest and growth among some of these powers like Bavaria. Look how little land they have at this point, and look how big they're going to be later.
Which didn't please some of their fellow Holy Roman Empire members, including at times the Austrians. And now we fast forward to 1792, because someone was about to change up all of Europe. Guess who?
Someone.
That's right, Napoleon. In this year, France's armies overran the Palatinate region under Bavarian rule. In 1795, they entered Bavaria itself and conquered Munich, being greeted by many liberal Bavarians who were against the absolutist rule. Finally, they reached peace with the Treaty of Luneville.
And I should mention, too, as an American, since a lot of Americans have German ancestry, probably more than any other single people group, a lot of German ancestry is going to be settled in Western Germany. It's going to be Rhineland-Palatinate, this area over here, and then Baden-Württemberg. There's not nearly as much immigration into the United States from places like Bavaria, though it did happen.
losing the Palatinate and two smaller duchies of Zweibrücken and Jülich. However, Napoleon's victory was not a death sentence for Bavaria. In fact, it ended up helping it. In 1803, due to a territorial rearrangement by the French, Bavaria was granted a number of new territories. Here we can see in light green the territory they had before, and the dark green line shows its new borders after the land gain, bringing it very close to the current form. A year later, in 1806, the Confederation of the Rhine was created, leading to the end of the Holy Roman Empire. The Prince Elector of Bavaria declared himself king, and this is how the Duchy of Bavaria became the Kingdom of Bavaria.
And so take a look at this map as we're looking at much of what is later on going to be West Germany, but a little bit of East too. Hanover is a kingdom. In 1806, it's ruled by King George III, who's the King of Hanover, in addition to being the king in the UK. The Netherlands are in there. The Grand Duchy of Berg, so it's a Grand Duke. You've got Saxony and Bavaria and Württemberg are going to be kingdoms. So, they're all kind of various breakdowns of Holstein up there in the north.
Bavaria. The Kingdom of Bavaria existed from 1806 to 1918. It is during this period, in 1814, that most of Bavaria's current borders were established, when Bavaria ceded Tyrol and Vorarlberg to the Austrians and received Aschenfernberg and Würzburg in return, and then it existed as an independent kingdom for a while. After the rise of Prussia to power in the north of Germany, it kept its independence by playing off the rivalry between Austria and Prussia, not becoming part of the North German Federation in 1867, but then joining the...
And this is where you've got the formation, about to have the formation of the German Empire of the Germans, and you've got war with the Schleswig-Holstein Wars, war with Denmark, you've got war with Austria, you've got war with France, and Germany's going to win all of those.
German Empire in 1871, after siding with Prussia on a war against France.
Now, it's important to note that it's a German empire, and so even though we think of Germany and we think of Kaiser Wilhelm, things like that, there were still kings during World War I. Sometimes you'll hear about an army being led by a crown prince. Well, you need to ask the question, what crown prince? Because you have the crown prince of the empire, but you also have, for example, the crown prince of Württemberg. So there were multiple crown princes. There were kings and an emperor.
Continued as a monarchy within the empire, and it had some special rights, such as an army, a railway service, a postal service, and a diplomatic body of its own. Despite having joined the German Empire in a somewhat peaceful way, a lot of Bavarians have a sense of separate national identity up to this day, being Bavarians first and Germans second. This might have to do with the fact that the Kingdom of Bavaria was mostly Catholic, while their, at the time, rulers of Prussia were mostly Protestants. An interesting aspect is that it's the only state in Germany which today currently calls itself a free state. It has no legal difference, and maybe they're just making a point. And then we get to 1918.
It's kind of like, and there are some minor differences, it's kind of like certain states in the United States are not states, they're commonwealths. Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, they're the Commonwealth. I think Virginia might be as well. Rather than the state of Pennsylvania, it's the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
After World War I, the German Empire was abolished and a republic was instaured, both on a federal level and also locally in Bavaria. The Kingdom of Bavaria came to an end, and the current Free State of Bavaria was created. However, a fun fact is that, up to this day, no member of the House of Wittelsbach ever formally declared renunciation of the throne.
Yeah,
so that
and Bavaria did still have a president, for example. I want to say that Hermann Goering was the president of Bavaria at one point. Had to look it up to be sure. No, he was the president of Prussia, not Bavaria.
That is how Bavaria evolved into its current form. It has a unique aspect amongst German states, having two official flags of equal status, one with a white and blue stripe, and the other with the white and blue losangs, which is the shield of the House of Wittelsbach.
Prefer
Today,
the left one.
It shares borders with Austria, Czechia, and Switzerland. Within Germany, it borders the state of Baden-Württemberg, Hesse, Thuringia, and Saxony. You could currently divide it into Franconia, Bavarian Swabia, Upper Palatinate, Lower Bavaria, and Upper Bavaria. Interestingly, the geographic center of the European Union is located in the northwest corner of Bavaria. It has one of the largest economies of any region in Germany, or Europe for that matter. Its GDP in 2007 exceeded 434 billion. In 2018, it had the lowest unemployment rate in Germany.
Wow.
And one of the lowest in all of the EU at 2.6%.
That's fantastic.
Today, the majority of the population
When you get to an unemployment level that's like under 3 like that, you're basically considered to be full employment. Basically, anybody who wants a job can get one.
Still Catholic at 50.5%. 18.8% are Protestants, 4% are Muslims, and 26.7% follow other or no religion. Due to their history and territorial changes, mainly 3 German dialects are spoken in Bavaria: Austro-Bavarian, Swabian German, and East Franconian German. So that was a brief look at the history of Bavaria as a state and as a region, starting.
Well, that was fun. I enjoyed that. I love learning about places, especially places I'm about to go visit. So I am going to be posting a video sometime in the next week or so, letting you know kind of the rough outline of our plans for the tour. Because our tour is going to last about a week. And like I said, we're going to be in Munich, we're going to be in Salzburg, we're going to be in Vienna. And there is some free time during each of those days. And so I know that some of you are local or you're not part of the tour, but you still wanted to be able to connect, maybe even visit some of the sites with us. And I would love for you to be able to do that. Would love to meet some of you. So I'll give you kind of a rough outline of when we're going to be where. And then within that, we can try to connect more definite in terms of where we're going to be, so we get a chance to have a few meetups while we're over there. And I've got some friends that are going to be in the area too, so I'll tell you about that in the video. But thanks for watching. Big shout out to John in Red Lion, Pennsylvania, and Sam O'Connor here in Northeast Ohio. Thank you so much for your support on Patreon. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.